The evening had started like any other company event, filled with soft chatter, clinking glasses, and the quiet hum of music playing from the speakers. The hall was bright and beautifully decorated, with long tables covered in white cloths and small lights placed along the walls. Everyone seemed relaxed, smiling, greeting each other. But for one person in the room, the night carried heavy pressure. The company's CEO stood near the stage, looking tired even though he tried to hide it. His eyes kept drifting toward the grand piano that sat quietly at the front of the room. It was supposed to be the highlight of tonight's entertainment. The problem was simple. The pianist had canceled at the very last moment due to an emergency, leaving the company scrambling. Now the piano sat untouched, and the CEO knew the guests were expecting something special. At that moment, the cleaner entered the hall with a small girl walking beside her. The cleaner kept her head low, hoping not to disturb the ongoing event. Her daughter, a quiet girl around 8 or 9, looked around the hall with wide eyes. She didn't say much, but there was something curious in the way she scanned everything, especially the piano. The girl's mother whispered to her, reminding her to stay close and behave. She nodded softly. They were only there to finish a quick task in a corner of the room, far from the guests. Normally, the little girl would wait outside or sit in the staff room, but today had been a long day, and her mother didn't want to leave her alone. While the CEO was trying to decide what to do about the missing performance, his eyes landed on the little girl who stared at the piano as if she knew it personally. He didn't think much of it at first, but after watching her for a few seconds, he walked closer. Something about her calm and focused look caught his attention. The mother noticed him approaching and gently pulled her daughter back, bowing slightly. She apologized before he even said a word. "Sorry, sir. She's just looking. I'll take her away," the mother said in a nervous voice. The CEO waved his hand lightly. "No, it's fine." He looked at the little girl. "Do you like the piano?" She nodded shyly, her hands folding behind her back. He smiled a little, though it was clear his mind was still full of stress. "Can you play the piano? It's very pressing right now." His voice carried a tired attempt at humor, as if he didn't really expect an answer. Some of the guests nearby heard the question and glanced over, amused. A child playing at a formal event? It sounded silly. A few even chuckled quietly, not in a cruel way, but in a way that suggested they were simply waiting to see what would happen. The girl's mother looked embarrassed. "Sir, she's just a child. Please don't mind her. She just likes looking at things." She tried again to pull her daughter away, but this time, the girl took a small step forward. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she looked at the piano, then at the CEO, then at her mother. Her expression was gentle, but full of something that made the room pause, not confidence exactly, but sincerity. "Can I try?" she asked in a soft voice. Her mother instantly shook her head. No, don't trouble anyone. Stay with me." The CEO raised his hand again. "It's all right. She won't break it." He gave a small smile. "We have no pianist tonight anyway." The guests around them stopped talking, now curious. Some leaned slightly forward. Others whispered, wondering if this was really happening. The girl walked toward the piano with small, careful steps, as if unsure whether she was allowed to go any closer. When she reached the bench, she brushed her hand along the polished wood, admiring it. She looked at her mother again for approval. Her mother seemed torn, worried about causing trouble, but unable to refuse the CEO's permission. "It's okay," the CEO said again, gently. "Go ahead." The little girl sat down. Her feet hung slightly above the ground, not quite reaching the pedals. She touched one key softly, letting a single note float into the air. A simple sound, yet it made more people turn their heads. No one expected her to play anything meaningful. Most thought she would tap a few keys randomly, maybe make the room laugh a little. Even the CEO watched with a tired smile, expecting nothing more than a child's playfulness. Guests around the room returned to their conversations, though they still kept an ear open, curious to hear what the girl would do next. She placed her small hands on the keys with care, her fingers spread lightly, as if she was remembering something. She took a deep breath, her shoulders rising and falling as though she was preparing for something important. The CEO crossed his arms, watching her closely now. There was something different about the way she touched the keys, soft, thoughtful, not random. Her mother stood a few steps behind, twisting her fingers nervously. She knew her daughter liked to watch videos of people playing the piano online, but she had never seen her sit at a real piano before. She worried the girl might embarrass herself or worse, upset the guests. But the girl seemed unaware of the tension. She pressed another key, then another, forming a small pattern. It was gentle and simple, but it had a softness that made the closest listeners pause again. A group of younger employees turned around in their seats. A server carrying a tray slowed down his step. Someone near the back of the room nudged their friend. "Is she actually playing something?" They whispered. The CEO, now more curious than amused, lowered his arms and stepped closer to the piano. His face softened, the stress lines easing just a bit. The little girl continued testing the keys for a moment, creating small, delicate notes. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't nervous. She was simply exploring the instrument with a quiet kind of respect. Though the notes were simple, there was something strangely peaceful in the way she played them. People found themselves listening without meaning to. Even those who weren't paying attention at first had now turned their eyes toward the girl. The hall grew quieter, not silent, but calmer. It was as if everyone sensed that something unexpected might happen. Her mother stepped forward slightly, ready to take her away if things went wrong. But the CEO lifted a hand toward her, silently telling her to wait. The girl shifted her posture, adjusting a little on the bench. She placed both hands gently on the keys again. She took another breath, deeper this time, the kind someone takes when they're about to begin something real. For a moment, the entire hall seemed to hold its breath with her. She pressed the first key of what seemed like an actual melody. A soft sound floated out clear, steady, thoughtful. No one spoke. The little girl wasn't just touching keys anymore. She was beginning to play. And although it was only the start, the room could already feel something shifting, like the quiet before a moment that no one expected but everyone would remember. The room grew strangely quiet as the little girl sat before the piano, her small hands resting on the keys. No one expected much from her. Some of the guests had already turned back to their conversations, assuming the moment would be over quickly. But a few people stayed focused, sensing something different in the way she prepared herself. The girl took a slow breath, the kind that came from deep inside. Her eyes stayed on the keys as if she trusted them more than the crowd watching her. She pressed down again, starting a simple melody. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was soft, gentle, almost unsure at first. But there was something about the way she played that made people pause again. The sound drifted across the hall like a small whisper that somehow reached every corner. Guests who had been laughing stopped mid-sentence. A waiter who was placing glasses on a tray looked over his shoulder. Even the CEO, who had been dealing with stress the entire evening, straightened up and leaned slightly forward. The girl didn't notice any of it. Her eyes were focused, her shoulders relaxed. She pressed another key, then a few more, and the melody slowly grew clearer. Her fingers moved with light, careful movements, as if she had spent hours watching and memorizing how real musicians did it. Her mother watched in confusion and worry. She had never seen her daughter sit at a real piano before. She knew the girl liked listening to music and watching videos of musicians, but she had no idea she could actually play anything. She kept her hands together, unsure whether she should stop her daughter or let her continue. But when she looked around and saw people listening instead of laughing, she didn't say anything. The girl's playing grew smoother. What began as a few soft notes slowly turned into a short tune. It wasn't perfect, but it had feeling. Even those who didn't understand music could sense something warm and honest in each note. A pair of employees near the back of the room whispered to each other, "Is she really playing that?" One asked, "It sounds nice." The other replied, surprised. Another person closer to the stage leaned toward a colleague. "I didn't expect that at all." The CEO continued watching. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in frustration, but in curiosity. He wasn't a musician, but he could tell the girl wasn't simply hitting random keys. There was intention in her movements, something gentle but meaningful. The girl shifted her hands and played a second pattern of notes. This one was slightly more confident, as if she was beginning to trust herself. The melody flowed more smoothly, making a few listeners nod unconsciously to the rhythm. The hall was no longer filled with the usual event noise. Instead, there was quiet attention. Soft breaths, quiet footsteps, and the clear sound of piano keys filled the space. Her mother stepped forward again, unsure, but the CEO gave her a small gesture to wait. He didn't want the girl to stop, not yet. Something about her playing felt calming in a way he hadn't expected. It didn't erase the long week he had just faced, or the decisions waiting for him tomorrow. But for the first time that night, he felt a tiny break in the weight pressing on him. That feeling made him stay still. The girl's hands moved again. She wasn't copying a song exactly. She was piecing together little sounds she remembered, something from a video she saw, something she once hummed to herself, something that simply felt right. Her face softened as she played, like she was letting the music guide her instead of thinking too much. A soft murmur spread across the room again, not of laughter this time, but of surprise. Where did she learn that? Someone whispered, she looks so calm. Another said, it's unusual, but beautiful. A guest added, the girl didn't hear any of it. Her world had become the piano. The notes she made weren't perfect, but each one came from a place that felt honest. It was the kind of playing that wasn't about skill, but about emotion. She pressed a higher key, then followed it with a gentle run of notes down the keyboard. People who had turned away before now turned back again. There was something soothing about the sound, something that made people forget. They were at a formal event. Her mother covered her mouth lightly, still unsure how to react. She looked at her daughter with a mix of confusion, wonder, and pride she hadn't expected to feel tonight. The CEO stepped a little closer. His eyes weren't tired for the first time that night. Instead, they showed something softer. His shoulders relaxed as he watched the small girl continue to play without fear or hesitation. The girl's fingers moved more freely now. She was growing comfortable, as if the piano was finally welcoming her. Every note she played seemed to draw more people into the moment, and the more the room quieted, the more she seemed to let her emotions show through her music. A few people near the front exchanged quiet looks. She's doing better than the hired performer. One joked quietly, honestly. Yes, the other replied, but their smiles weren't mocking. They were impressed. The girl took another breath and continued with a new pattern, soft at first, then slightly louder. Her hands moved more smoothly across the keys, her fingers gliding like she had practiced for years. Even though she had never touched a real piano before today, the guests were no longer just curious. They were listening. Someone whispered, "This is amazing." Another added, "She looks like she was born to play." And someone else near the stage said quietly, "This feels special." The CEO found himself agreeing. He wasn't sure why, but something in the melody touched a part of him he had forgotten for a long time. Maybe it was the softness in her style, or the courage she showed even with a crowd watching her. Maybe it was simply the innocence in her playing, pure, honest, without trying to impress anyone. He took a slow breath, letting himself listen. The girl looked peaceful as she played. For her, this wasn't about performing for anyone. It wasn't about proving something. It wasn't even about the event. It was simply about the music she loved and the chance to touch a real piano. Her hands moved quicker for a moment, then settled back into the softer melody she started with. She was shaping something beautiful without even realizing it. More people gathered around the piano area now. Even those who had gone to get food or drinks walked back, drawn by the sound. The music wasn't grand or loud, it was gentle, emotional, and strangely comforting. It wrapped around the room like a warm breeze. The girl's mother blinked back a few tears she didn't expect. She had always known her daughter had a quiet love for music, but hearing it come alive in such a public place made her heart feel heavy and full at the same time. The CEO looked at her briefly and saw the same emotion in her eyes. He offered a small nod, as if telling her that everything was all right, that her daughter wasn't causing trouble, but creating something beautiful. The little girl continued playing, unaware of how much attention she had captured. She was lost in the soft world of the notes flowing under her fingertips. She didn't think about the crowd, or the CEO, or the guests. She didn't think about her mother's worried expression. She only thought about the music that made her happy. Her fingers pressed a final gentle chord, holding it for a moment before letting it fade slowly. The hall stayed silent for a breath longer than expected, and in that silence, something changed. The guests leaned forward. The CEO's eyes softened. Her mother felt a mix of pride and wonder. They didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of the moment that would soon move the entire room and bring the CEO to tears. The final soft note faded into the air, leaving the hall unusually quiet. For a moment, it felt as if the entire room was suspended in time. Unsure of whether to clap or simply breathe, the little girl sat still at the piano, her hands resting gently on her lap, as if she wasn't sure whether she should look up or keep her eyes on the keys. She didn't know how many people were watching her now. She had only meant to touch the piano once, maybe play a little, just because it made her happy. She didn't expect the room to fall silent, or the guests to gather around her. She didn't expect the CEO himself to stand just a few steps away. For a moment, the girl felt shy again. She curled her fingers slightly, almost ready to pull her hands back and leave the bench. But something inside her paused. The keys were still warm under her fingertips, as if inviting her to continue. And then, without planning it, she placed her hands back on the piano. A soft murmur moved across the room. People leaned forward again, waiting. The girl pressed a single note, then another. She played slowly, as if testing the air, checking whether the melody she wanted to create could really live outside her mind. The CEO watched closely. Something in the way she played tugged at him, not just curiosity now, but emotion. The simple notes carried a feeling he couldn't describe, but recognized somewhere deep inside. The girl's second melody began forming, not copied from anything she had heard before. It was hers, built from little moments she remembered. The sound of her mother humming while she cleaned, the tune she tapped on the table with her fingers when she was bored, the rhythm she once made by tapping her shoes on the floor while waiting. All those small pieces came together in her mind. Her fingers moved more confidently this time. The notes were still gentle, but they carried more shape, more feeling. Her shoulders relaxed. Her eyes softened. She tilted her head slightly as she played, listening to each sound with care. People noticed the change. She's not just playing, she's creating something. Someone whispered, "I didn't expect this from a child." Another said quietly. A guest near the back put down their drink without taking a sip. A pair of co-workers, who had been mid-conversation, suddenly stopped and turned toward the stage. Even the servers paused in their steps, unsure if they should keep moving or just stand still. Her mother watched with her hands pressed together. Her eyes followed every movement of her daughter's fingers. She didn't know how her child learned any of this. She didn't even know her daughter could play more than a few notes. Seeing her glide across the keys like she belonged there made her heart beat faster, full of emotions she didn't know how to express. Meanwhile, the CEO took a deeper breath, the first calm breath he had taken in days. He didn't understand how a simple melody played by a small girl could make the weight inside him lift even a little, but it did. The girl continued to play, her fingers slowly moving into a more complex pattern. She pressed a case softly, then followed with a slightly stronger note. The shift created a small wave through the melody, enough for people to feel the emotion deepen. Someone near the stage whispered, "It sounds like she's telling a story." Another replied, "I can feel it. I don't know how, but I can." The girl didn't know what story she was telling. She only knew what she felt. And through her music, that feeling traveled through the room, touching each listener differently. The CEO's expression changed again. His eyes softened further, almost sad, but in a warm way. The melody reminded him of his childhood, of quiet evenings when life felt simpler, when he didn't have to carry the weight of the company or worry about decisions every single day. It reminded him of moments he rarely had time to think about anymore. The girl shifted again, moving her left hand lower on the keyboard while her right hand created higher notes. The combination made the melody richer, fuller. People who had been standing further away began to walk closer, drawn by the unexpected beauty coming from the little girl in the oversized event hall. Her mother blinked back another tear. She didn't want anyone to see her cry, but the music felt like it held pieces of her own life to quiet struggles, long days, hopes she never spoke aloud. The girl continued to play, unaware of how deeply she was affecting the people around her. She leaned closer to the piano, following the flow of the melody. Her fingers moved with a strange mix of innocence and purpose, as if she understood something about music that she never had words for. A young employee whispered, "How is she doing this?" Another answered softly, "It doesn't make sense, but it doesn't have to. Just listen." The girl pressed a small sequence of notes that sounded like a turning point in the melody, gentle, hopeful, as if she was lifting the room with her music. The CEO swallowed, his throat tightening unexpectedly. He didn't cry easily. He didn't express emotions openly. His whole life felt like it was built on being strong, calm, stable, but something about the melody made him feel vulnerable again, in a way that wasn't frightening but strangely freeing. The girl played on. Her hands moved with more confidence now. The room grew even quieter, if that was possible. People didn't breathe loudly. They didn't move unless they had to. They didn't look at their phones, which lay forgotten in pockets and bags. It was rare for a room full of adults, busy people, stressed people, achievers, planners, to stand still and simply feel something. But that was exactly what happened. The girl pressed a sequence of notes, a soft, flowing mix that sounded almost like the wind passing through open windows. Then she followed it with a deeper, slower note that felt grounding, steady. The guests leaned in even more. "She's incredible," someone whispered. "She's so peaceful." Another responded, "I wish I could hear this every night." A third person murmured. But the girl didn't hear any of that. She didn't see the crowd gathered around her or the eyes watching her with awe. She didn't see her mother wiping her eyes quietly. She didn't see the CEO standing still, completely absorbed. She simply played. The melody began to shift again. This time, it grew slightly louder. Not dramatic, but stronger, like the moment a quiet breeze becomes a steady wind. Her hands moved faster, her fingers gliding across the keys in patterns that made even those who didn't understand music feel something move inside them. The CEO felt a tightness in his chest, not painful, but emotional. The music reminded him of things he had buried deep, hopes he once had, memories he hadn't visited in years, people he missed. He felt warmth in his eyes, but he blinked quickly, trying to stay composed. The girl's melody rose gently, carrying emotion without force. It wasn't a performance meant to impress, it was something honest, open, vulnerable. Her mother held her breath as the melody lifted. She had never heard anything like this from her daughter. She didn't think her daughter even knew how to express herself like this. It made her heart swell with pride so strong she had to press a hand against her chest. The girl reached the peak of her melody, a soft, beautiful stretch of notes that felt like the highest point of a long journey. People listening felt it too. They leaned forward unconsciously, drawn into the music, and then, slowly, the melody began to fall. Not in a sad way, but in a gentle return, like someone walking back home after a long day. Her fingers moved slower again, softer, more delicate. People relaxed their shoulders, breathing out quietly without realizing they'd been holding their breath. The CEO's eyes glistened. He didn't brush away the moisture this time. He let it stay. Something inside him felt lighter, as if the music had touched a piece of him he forgot existed. The little girl pressed a final cluster of notes, soft, warm, fading naturally like the last light at the end of a day. And then she lifted her hands. The room stayed silent for a long moment. No one moved. No one spoke. The melody lingered in everyone's hearts, holding them in a place they didn't want to leave just yet. The little girl looked at the keys, unsure what to do. She didn't expect people to react. She didn't think anyone was listening that closely. It wasn't until she heard the first quiet clap from a single person near the front that she slowly looked up. And then another clap, and another. Then, suddenly, the entire hall erupted into applause. Not polite applause, not amused applause. But warm, heartfelt applause, clapping that felt full of gratitude and amazement. Her mother brought her hands to her face. The CEO blinked, a tear finally falling. He didn't hide it, because the little girl had done something he never expected. She had reached the hearts of everyone in the room, including his. The next morning arrived quietly, as if the world itself did not want to disturb the feeling that had settled around her. The night before, she woke early, long before the sun had fully risen, and lay still for a moment, listening to the soft sounds of the house. Outside, a few birds were already awake, their chirping faint but cheerful. She breathed slowly, trying to steady the mix of nerves and excitement inside her. She recalled the previous day, every moment still vivid: the teacher's doubt, the classmates' stares, the challenge, and then the transformation of the room when her hands touched the piano. She could still feel the echo of the keys in her fingertips. It wasn't just the music that stayed with her. It was how the room had changed, how the silence had turned into awe. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. But she also knew something important. One moment of success didn't mean her journey was complete. If she wanted to hold on to that feeling, if she wanted to grow, she would have to keep going. She would have to practice harder, stay determined, and trust herself even when others didn't. She sat up, rubbed her eyes, and quietly walked to the small living room, where an old keyboard sat on a wooden table. It wasn't like the grand piano in the classroom, not shiny, not perfect, but it had history. It had been her mother's, then her brother's, and now it felt like a part of her. She touched one key. The soft sound filled the room. She smiled, even though she had played so confidently yesterday. She knew she still had a long way to go. She had talent, yes, but she had to shape it. She had to learn discipline. She had to understand the heart of music, not just the movements. As she practiced, she imagined the teacher's face, how shocked he had looked, how the students had gone silent. She wondered what they would think today. Would they treat her differently? Would they ignore her again? Or would they be curious? She wasn't sure. She didn't want to expect too much. But deep down, she hoped the room would feel different. When she arrived at school later that morning, the hallways were louder than usual. She walked slowly, holding her backpack close. A few students glanced toward her, whispering to each other. Normally, she would lower her head and walk faster, but today she didn't. Today she kept her pace steady. When she entered the classroom, a strange hush fell over the room. Not unfriendly, just curious. Some students looked at her in a new way, as if trying to figure out who she really was. She took her seat. Her hands were still, but her heart beat a little faster. The teacher entered moments later. He carried a stack of papers, but his eyes went straight to her. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say something, but then he nodded slightly and began the lesson. It wasn't much, but it felt like a small shift. Throughout the morning, she noticed small changes. A girl near her asked if she needed a pencil. A boy at the back asked if she could show him how she played that complicated part from yesterday. Another student quietly said, "That was amazing." As they passed by her desk, it wasn't overwhelming, and she didn't suddenly become the most popular student. But the air around her was different. Instead of doubt, there was interest. Instead of silence, there was respect. During the break, a few students gathered around her, not in a demanding way, but with genuine curiosity. They asked questions not just about her playing, but about how long she had been practicing, whether she took lessons, what her favorite music was. She felt a little shy but answered softly, trying her best not to seem closed off. She wasn't used to attention, and part of her didn't know how to handle it. But she also realized something comforting. She didn't have to pretend. She just had to be herself. When music class finally came again, she felt a quiet mix of calm and anticipation. She didn't expect anything special to happen today. She didn't want to repeat yesterday or prove herself again. She just wanted to enjoy the moment. The teacher spoke to the class about different types of compositions and how music could tell stories. He even referenced what she had played the day before, though he didn't mention her name directly. He only said, "Sometimes talent shows itself when you least expect it, and it reminds us that everyone has something special inside them." She felt warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't praise, but it was acknowledgement, recognition, something she rarely experienced. Toward the end of the lesson, the teacher asked the class to break into small groups and explore a short melody. She found herself in a group with students who had never paid attention to her before. At first, they didn't quite know how to talk to her, but soon the awkwardness faded. They asked her for help, not in a way that put pressure on her, but in a way that made her feel like a real part of the group. They wanted to know how she interpreted music, how she felt the rhythm, how she shaped the sound. She tried her best to explain. She didn't speak with big words or complicated terms. She talked simply, the way she understood music, as feelings, as moments, as stories. Her group managed to create a melody that sounded smooth and warm. The teacher listened and nodded approvingly. "This is very good," he said. "You worked well together." Those words might have been meant for the whole group, but she felt them settle deeply inside her. Being recognized for her contribution, not just her talent, meant something. It made her feel like she belonged. After class ended, the teacher stopped her on the way out. "You did well today," he said kindly. "Not just with the piano yesterday, but with the group today. Music isn't only about playing, it's also about sharing, and you did that beautifully." She felt her cheeks warm, but she smiled. The walk home felt lighter than usual. She noticed the small things: the golden sunlight on the pavement, the breeze rustling through the trees, the distant sound of a car radio playing a cheerful tune. Everything felt a bit brighter. When she reached home, her family noticed the change in her too. Her sibling asked, "You look happy. Something good happened?" She nodded. "I think things are getting better." Her family smiled with her, sharing the joy without needing every detail. Later that evening, she practiced again on the old keyboard. But today, it wasn't because she felt pressured or because she wanted to prove anything. She played because she loved it, because the music made her feel whole, because it reminded her of who she was when the world got too loud. Her fingers glided over the keys, gentle at first, then steady and confident. She played a soft melody that she hadn't learned from anyone else. It came from her heart, from everything she had experienced, every challenge, every moment of doubt, and every spark of hope. As she played, she thought about tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days to come. She didn't expect everything to be perfect. She knew there would be challenges, moments when she felt unsure again. But she also knew she had something strong inside her. Music wasn't just something she did. It was a part of her. And after yesterday, after today, she understood something important. She didn't need anyone else to define her worth. She didn't need permission to shine. All she needed was to trust the sound inside her, the one that had always been there, waiting to be heard, With that thought, she closed her eyes and let the melody flow, filling the room with warmth and quiet courage. The applause finally faded, but the feeling in the room stayed warm, almost glowing. The little girl sat there on the piano bench, her hands resting quietly on her lap as if she had not just moved an entire room of adults to silence. Her mother stood close by, still trying to understand what had just happened. She kept staring at her daughter as if she had suddenly met a new version of her, one she had never fully seen before. The guests slowly returned to their seats, but their eyes stayed on the girl. No one wanted to look away too soon, scared they might miss something more. A few people whispered to each other, but even their voices were soft, almost respectful. It was like the room understood that something special had just taken place, something that didn't happen at ordinary events. The CEO took a moment before walking toward the girl. He wiped the last of the tears from his cheeks with the back of his hand and took a deep breath. He didn't want to come too fast, worried he might overwhelm her. She was just a child, after all, even if she had played like someone far older. When he finally reached her, he crouched down so he was at her eye level. His voice came out gentle, much softer than the one he used in meetings. "Thank you," he said quietly, as if those two simple words had more weight than usual. "You don't know what you just did for me." The girl looked up at him shyly. She didn't say anything, but she gave a small smile. Her mother moved closer, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. She still wasn't sure if she should apologize for the attention, or thank the CEO for letting her daughter play. He looked at the mother next, his expression warm and honest. "Your daughter has a gift, a rare one." The mother swallowed, unsure how to respond. She just plays for fun," she said softly. "At home, when we have a little time. I didn't know she could do that." The CEO glanced back at the piano as if listening again to the memory of the music. "Not many people can play with that kind of feeling," he said. "It was more than skill. It meant something. I could feel it." The mother nodded slowly. She didn't fully understand music, but she understood sincerity, and his voice held plenty of that. Other guests soon approached. A woman in a long blue dress stepped forward first. She was smiling in disbelief. "That was unbelievable," she said. "How old is she?" "8. The mother answered quietly. "8?" The woman repeated, eyes wide. "She plays like she's been training for years." Several others added their own comments, soft, shocked, impressed. Some complimented the little girl. Some complimented the mother. A few even said they had tears in their eyes when the girl played the softer part of the melody. The girl listened politely, but she kept glancing down, her feet swinging slightly off the bench. She didn't look uncomfortable, just unsure how to handle so much attention. After a moment, the CEO raised a hand, guiding the room back into calm. Then he stood and spoke in a clear, steady tone. "Everyone," he said, "I want to share something." The room turned quiet again. Cameras lowered. People leaned forward. "The piece she played. My mother used to play it for me when I was young," he said. "I haven't heard it in years. I didn't even know anyone else knew it. Hearing it again tonight brought back memories I thought I'd lost." He paused, eyes turning toward the girl once more. "And she didn't just play it. She understood it. I could hear it in every note." The room softened. Even those who didn't know the CEO personally could hear the emotion in his words. Then he turned fully toward the girl and her mother. "If you allow me," he continued, "I would like to help her continue this path. She deserves real training, real support, and I want to make sure she gets it." The mother blinked in surprise. "Support," she repeated. "Yes," he said with a warm nod. "I'd like to offer her a music scholarship. Full support. Private lessons, instruments, school fees, everything she needs." The mother's hand tightened gently on her daughter's shoulder. "Sir, that's too much. We can't, please," he said kindly, cutting her off in the most respectful way. "Let me do this. It's not charity. It's an investment in someone truly talented." The girl looked up at her mother, her eyes full of quiet hope. She didn't say anything, but her expression spoke loudly enough that the mother hesitated, overwhelmed. But then she slowly nodded. "If it's really okay, then yes. Thank you." The CEO smiled, visibly relieved. "It's more than okay." A few people clapped softly, touched by the moment. The girl looked between all of them, unsure whether to smile or hide behind her mother. She ended up doing a little of both. Soon after, one of the event organizers came forward and asked the girl if she would like to play another piece. The guests were eager to hear more, but she looked at her mother first, seeking approval. Her mother bent down, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "Only if you want to," she said gently. The girl nodded. She wasn't nervous anymore. Something inside her felt strong now, like playing the piano wasn't something she needed to hide or keep small. She climbed back onto the bench, adjusted her fingers, and began another melody, this one lighter, more playful. The room filled once again with soft, warm notes. People watched with a mix of admiration and calm joy. Even those who had come only for business now felt grateful that they had stayed long enough to witness something so unexpected. Meanwhile, the CEO stepped back, watching the girl with a peaceful expression. It felt like a weight had lifted from him. The stress he had carried throughout the week, perhaps even longer, felt lighter now. Music had reached him in a way that no meeting, no speech, no document ever could. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over him. It reminded him of simpler days, when life was not so full of responsibility. He remembered sitting beside his mother as she played the same melody. He remembered the warmth of those evenings, the way her hands glided across the keys, the way she smiled at him after finishing a piece. For the first time in a long time, he felt connected to those memories again. When the girl finished, the crowd applauded once more. This time the applause felt even warmer, like the whole room had become a family gathered around a gifted child. As the event slowly came to an end, the CEO approached the mother again with the details of the support he wanted to offer. He assured her that everything would be handled properly, professionally, and respectfully. She nodded, grateful but still slightly overwhelmed by everything happening. The girl held her mother's hand as they prepared to leave. Before stepping out of the hall, she looked back at the piano one more time. She didn't say anything, but the way her eyes lingered made it clear that this moment, this night, had changed something inside her. Maybe it was confidence. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was both. Outside, the cool air greeted them. The mother bent down and hugged her daughter tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. The girl hugged her back. "I just played," she said softly. "Yes," her mother replied, "but you played from your heart." As they walked away, the girl looked up at the night sky, feeling lighter, braver, and more excited about the future than ever before. Back inside the hall, the CEO stood alone for a moment near the piano, running his fingers lightly over the keys. He smiled to himself. A little girl had walked into the event as a guest's child, and walked out as someone who had changed the entire evening. It was a night no one would forget. The guests would talk about it for months. Some would even say it was the best moment they had ever witnessed at any event. And the CEO, he would remember it as the night a young girl's music brought him back to a part of his life he thought was gone forever. A moment born from a simple question: "Can you play the piano?" And a little girl's brave answer: "Choosing to try."